to meet everyone. I'm Bryan Lee, co-founder and CEO of Ruli AI. And we'll try to keep this fun and lively since we're, closers and, in between you and happy hour, which, I'm told is going to be spectacular. So let me introduce the panel and a little bit of the topic that we're going to go through. And on my far right is Tommy Tavares Ferreira, and she's the head of legal ops at Cedar. Next to her is Steph Corey, co-founder, CEO of Uplevel Ops Link, as well as co-founder of Clock. And on my right, Tarek Sultani, chief legal officer of Magic Leap. Him and I go back to Google a long time as well. And maybe I'll open it up to the group to maybe introduce themselves and maybe tell us a little bit about your relationship with AI so far.
Hey everybody, I'm Tommy Tavares Ferreira. I head up legal operations at Cedar. I'm very impressed that you got my last name right because we didn't practice that.
We did not.
We did not. So great job. So my relationship to AI has largely been probably life-changing in the last 2 years, like everybody else. Like I think I'm an early adopter of most technologies, so I'm super thrilled to be talking about it today. How about you, Steph?
Yeah, I would say not a day goes by that I don't use AI.
Right.
Steph Corey, it's great to see a lot of familiar faces here. I've been doing legal operations my whole career. I was at some big companies like HP and VMware and Flextronics, and then started a consulting business called Uplevel Ops where we help folks get their legal operations in order. Of course, AI has really taken over, and so a lot of our consulting ends up being around AI. And also, like Bryan said, a co-founder of Clock and Link, which is now part of TechGC, which is now called the L Suite. There's going to be a quiz on that.
Awesome. Well, Tarek Sultani, Chief Legal Officer, Corporate Secretary, Head of Corporate Development and Strategic Deals at Magic Leap. That's the full title. Yeah, I open my big mouth a lot and I get extra things to work on. So I prior to that, as Bryan said, I worked with him at Google. I was also, in between those two things, general counsel of JLL Technologies. Yeah, lots of trauma together at Google, working really hard strategic deals there too. Relationship with AI, so I oversaw JLL's AI program along with the global CTO. It was co-sponsored initiatives. That was 100,000 employees, as well as a lot of different products that were developed, serving the vast majority of the Fortune 500, it's a Fortune 200 company. So a lot of experience there. But coincidentally with L Suite, I was actually just at L Suite dinner earlier this week, and the question came up, sort of what is the AI tool that you use the most at this point, and sort of a roundtable question for everybody. And I said I actually have to wear a different hat because in addition to what I do at Magic Leap and what I did at JLL, I also teach AI in the law. I did the first session this year, and one of my favorite pastimes is to see if I can break AI. And it's like, who actually does that? Like, I actually sit there and see, like, can I break this thing? And so my favorite tool right now is actually Grok, because it's so easy to break. So, Grok is like, it's like, oh yeah, I can make you do all sorts of horrible, unethical things. So kudos to Anthropic, because I don't know how to break the Claude at all. But Grok is super easy to break. I know Ruli is amazing though. So this is why you need to invest in tools like Ruli, because it's going to give you the right prompts that don't get you into trouble in the same way where people like me try and get you into trouble.
We'll have to let you battle test it now that I know. We'll have to see if we can.
I could be your white hat hacker, although I don't know if I really wear a white hat. You never know. I should probably wear hats because I'm like Vineet. I don't have all my hair anymore.
So we're going to go into a live pen test actually right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Bryan here, and co-founder, CEO of Ruli AI. So longtime recovering attorney. I worked with Tarek. He was often my in-house counsel on a number of things at Google. So the last 10 years have been building different things in product. Worked on the first Google Assistant. Worked on a number of different products in sort of trust and safety privacy areas. And then early LLMs we used them at Google on the advertiser brand safety team, sort of like using LLMs to look at YouTube content and making sure advertisers' ads don't show up against content they don't necessarily want to appear next to, and that sort of premium ad product. And then also worked on some augmented reality glasses at Meta. So I've got kind of an interesting experience too, but I'd like to lean into sort of the panelists here, probably more of the legal experts that we have on stage today. And the topic that we have today is sort of like leveraging AI agents for scalable support in legal ops. And what does that mean? I kind of think about it as like, what is an AI agent, right? And I think Mark Benioff recently said this, at Davos, where it might be, the AI feature we've been looking for. It's sort of moving beyond ChatGPT and moving beyond only prompting, but how do we build AI into workflows? How do we build sort of autonomous, AI, mini workers, mini agents that kind of are semi-autonomous and then can do a lot of work end-to-end, multi-step, but then come back to you and bring you in once they need help. And they're kind of living in these sandboxes that you can create. And that's sort of what we're going to explore here. And we'll go through some AI governance, readiness of how to even get started, to bring in an AI agent potentially, some practical use cases, and maybe we'll also go into the future of maybe the cool things we could do once we might be able to do some more learning, and what does that future sort of look like. And maybe to just set the baseline of what we can do today, like at Ruli, we pair your knowledge with our platform to give you sort of these automated agent experiences. One of them, Legal Hub, is effectively this ability to mirror what happens in most in-house counsel teams. You have either paralegal or legal managers at the front door of your legal team, and they're answering questions for the business, things that they have answers for or are permitted to answer, and then sort of doing first issues pass of work that's coming in, and then routing it to the right lawyers, take the next steps. We basically automate that inside Slack, Microsoft Teams, and email in a very human way, and then we convert it into sort of this living matter management system. So really, I think it's a great example of what you can kind of do once you think, how we can add AI agents in the right places of your workflow. But love to hear more from panelists on, I think, the first step, which Tommy and Steph have rightly called out, is it's sort of like looking at like people, processes before technology, right? Sort of focusing on the pain points, and I think the first topic I have is how do we get ready for AI? What are the governance, the processes, and things that you put into place? And is it new? Is it scary? Maybe I'll pass it over to Tommy first.
So I think it's not new, and it's not new in the respect that legal operations professionals should be at this point used to getting prepared for big tech implementations, right? So 80% of what you could potentially do to get ready for this looks the same. It looks the same in that you have to do deep scoping, you have to figure out your requirements. Where is all of your information in your business, right? Like, so a lot of the preparedness for an agent that can take your body of knowledge and use that to automate responses and to do things means that you first needed a body of knowledge. And that's the scary part, and that's the part that I think a lot of the work is going to be done in getting prepared for this, is if you actually want the responses to be good, you need, good data in, good data out. So that, I think, looks exactly the same for, say, a CLM implementation. Like, I needed to know where all my contracts were, and I needed to get templates ready, et cetera. So some of the scoping of what you would do here looks similar to what you've done as a legal operations professional. What do you think, Steph?
I completely agree. I would say the one great thing about this technology is it's not a big, ugly implementation. Yeah. And so we've all lived through those. I've failed at a couple of them, I will be the first to admit. And that's not what this looks like. And so when we say the people, process, and then tech, kind of thinking of it in that way, what we mean by people is first look at the work coming in. Does this even meet the threshold of coming to legal? Should legal be doing this? Does this merit a lawyer, basically? If not, and do we need to be doing it at all? Like, we all hear do more with less. It's exhausting to continuously hear that. How about do less? Like, do we need to be doing this work? Okay, if no, stop doing it. If yes, I need to be doing this work, or can it be done by a paraprofessional, or how about an ALSP, an integrated partner who they've become so sophisticated, right? And so like look at clearing plates enough to get that body of work together, because nobody has time to lift their heads, get off the hamster wheel in order to prepare and do that readiness work for any tech implementation, or just you should be doing this for knowledge capture and all of it, right? So I think, look at the work coming in, make sure you've got the right people doing the work in the way I just said, right? And self-service, right? Like if you can get templates in place and self-service tools, obviously AI is a big player there. Process. There are always steps you can cut out of a process to make the line between A and B shorter, right? And so looking at cleaning up process, and then the tech is going to support that. And then I think from a tech standpoint, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. So where I have failed, and probably everybody in this room has been a part of, or maybe been responsible for some failure along the way, it's usually you tried to do too much. You maybe didn't get the right requirements gathered. You tried to do too much with the system, tried to solve for everybody's problems, which we all want to do as ops managers. And it just wasn't the right thing. The beauty about these technologies, and I'm sure Ruli too, is that you don't have to do it all at once. You could literally, we're going to talk about use cases, but you can do it in baby steps. And so one last point, and I promise I'll shut up. It's the, when you look at the work coming into the department, one exercise that we do, which you can all do, is we call it a value exercise, but it's the Eisenhower matrix of urgent, important. We do urgent and impactful when we look at it with clients. We tell them for 2 weeks, just stick your tasks in these, like don't spend too much time, just stick your tasks in there. And then that will really help bubble up like good, these are opportunities, right? Answering the same questions over and over again. Whatever it is, right? We can't find documents or whatever. And so just doing that exercise will help. It's a really valuable exercise. It sounds old fashioned, but it'll actually help you start this whole process. Yeah.
So I think, first of all, I always for years called it the Covey matrix because I learned about it.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're right. No, 100% you're right. And I
okay.
was like, people are like, what the heck's the Covey matrix?
Okay.
But because Stephen Covey in 7 Habits popularized it as well, but it is the Eisenhower matrix. Fantastic tool. Great reminder. I agree with everything you said, Stephanie. I think what's really important is it's almost like you have to know your limits. And so there's all this beautiful green field of, hey, I can go get this, I can make this more efficient, I can do all this. But if you try and do it all at once without scoping your requirements properly, you're probably doomed to fail. And I think where a lot of ops projects traditionally have floundered has been the difficulty of integration and how long an integration can take and how much back-end work needs to be done. And that, I think, this beauty of an agentic flow and an agentic tool is that it actually doesn't require that much because it's already been trained in the background. And so if you have it sitting there securely and then reading on your corpus, then it can actually be implemented fairly quickly and easily. And I think that's very exciting.
And I'm curious, like, I know we're on the theme of some of this is not new. And we found parallels with, I think when cloud was first coming on and there was a lot of uncertainty on how that exists, and then people created rules of like, well, this can't go on the cloud, this stays, local. But now pretty much everyone's on one of the 3 cloud players, and they're doing some sort of indexing and all that, of course, in the background. I'm curious, like, are there parallels we can draw from that on maybe components from the operations side, but also parts of the privacy policy, Tarek, like, and how you think about AI governance policies? Are you able to adapt from a cloud policy to do that, or we have to treat AI very differently in terms of privacy as well?
I think there's a few different aspects. So I think from a privacy standpoint, I think spot on, Bryan, and I think that is exactly the right framework to be thinking about. And I would say, at JLL, we had the advantage of building our own GPT, our own in-house GPT. And so that's why we were able to be so progressive in a way that a lot of other large, Fortune companies were not able to do. Because we were building it in-house, we knew it was secure, and we'd already done all the hard, deep work to protect our clients' data globally, and we had the right framework. So then we knew we could use that same secure environment to build our AI, and we knew that, and just what we had to ensure is that, it wasn't going out and wasn't being trained elsewhere, and so on and so forth. And that allowed us to just be very, very forward with AI. I do think that a lot of companies who didn't have quite that same reach and resource should not be afraid, because there is a lot of protection. There's a lot of well thought out. And in the early days, it was stumbling blocks, and there was always this fear of like, okay, is this tool now going to be giving out our CEO's succession plan, or is it not? Is it going to be?
Or anyone can access the intern can access it or something by like searching cloud.
And I was say, like, when I first started looking at something like Copilot and the amazing promise of that, I asked the question. I said, okay, but if it finds an HR file, is it now able to say, show me all L7 stack ranked by compensation? And they're like, yes, it probably could. I'm like, okay, so we have a problem. And they're like, oh no, but it's locked down. I'm like, yes, but have you seen the way our engineers use their security, or our HR people use their security? So we have to, there's still going to be those fears around privacy, and it's an MP, not a YP, but also it is a YP because I can't use your tool, that kind of thing. So I think those are the kinds of questions that people need to be asking themselves. There's like, is our own security strong enough? And that gets you from the privacy question. I do think there's a lot of other questions around, copyright, hallucinations, data integrity, all of those. That's probably a little bit. I could eat up the entire hour just talking about those. But when I think about how we craft a policy and how we think about responsible use for our enterprise, because that's actually where it starts. The tool can do everything right, but if people are not using it responsibly, if the employees are not using it responsibly, you're going to still have a problem. And so, it starts with the responsible use and educating your workforce on what it means to be responsible and how to use these tools properly in a way that is legally compliant, that is ethically compliant, and that is, but still it gives them the benefits of the productivity and the the amazing advancements that the tools offer. So that's first principles, right? And then you go and you apply the first principles. You build the tools. You train the employees, you retrain the employees, you retrain them again and again and again as many times. You still have bad actors. You fire the bad actors.
Can AI start training the employees as well, right?
Yeah.
AI helps you build the training materials for the employees. I did have to chuckle at one point where I used AI to help me generate a certain policy, we won't say which, but where my boss was like, wow, this is incredible. And I'm like, yes.
And
yes, but that's the power of good prompting, like Magic Prompt, can get you right there, and you do well with things like that. Yeah,
that's great. And then maybe I'm curious, like, what other use cases have I guess the legal ops folks been exploring? Because I think Tom, you also shared a number that you're exploring right now, and maybe you can share some of those with the group of like where we can take AI agents into the future.
Well, I think I was just about to say, to your point earlier about like scoping, I think we have to think about what it is that we want to do when we make these agents, right? So when I'm saying to my team, like, I want to be so forward, and we're a pretty forward-thinking team, but we come up against maybe more conservative attorneys who still want like that human in the loop. So they're like, okay, we can allow an agent if we want to, if we're thinking about, do we build one, do we buy one? Okay, we're going to allow an agent to do these first passes, but can it immediately like make a ticket or something so we can look at every single response it gave and we can see, is it hallucinating? Is it giving the right responses? And it's like, well, do we really actually want that? And so something happened the other day where, and this has nothing to do with an agent, but we had an HR person and they went to Gemini and they said, draft me something, and then my compliance team was reviewing the first draft of what they had Gemini do, and the compliance person goes, do we have a dress code? And everybody was like, no. And they were like,
you do now.
Right, like they were like, why did the person not sort of critique what was generated here? So I know I'm going sort of like a far path off of your question, but like thinking about like whether or not we're in the space yet where we're comfortable with whatever tool, whether we build one ourselves, whether we go and buy one off the shelves, but what is it that we want the tool to do? And are we as a team yet comfortable enough that this tool can take intake, respond automatically, not have anyone there to sort of do a level of QC. Is the technology there, and is the team's risk appetite there? Like the answer is probably maybe no on both right there. Like if we're all in this first space where we're testing these types of tools, maybe we're not. But if I listen to what Akshay and Sean said earlier, maybe we do up the risk appetite and go, yeah, let's figure out what gets broken. Maybe you only do a monthly review of responses and you only take some of the responses and you only QC some of them. Otherwise, you're just looking over everything that this agent put out, and you don't do that with your humans. You only come back to a human and look at something when it blows up. So why are we putting so much scrutiny on technology, not that much scrutiny on human mistakes? And so that's a real question in whatever tooling you sort of go with, is how much scrutiny is too much scrutiny, because we let humans make mistakes, right? And we forgive them. And we're in Silicon Valley. We're in a fail fast mantra, right? So do we apply that here? And I hope the answer is yes, so that we can get momentum.
So, and I love that thought process, and I love that because, I hear it all the time, like, oh, we can't use these tools, they hallucinate, right? But you're right, humans make errors all the time. I think the challenge has been on the AI front is, it presents itself in a way that it's like infallible. It's like, oh yeah, this is the exact case that you need, and you're like, that case doesn't exist.
Right.
And then it's like, you're right, that case didn't exist, but watch this one right here, and you're like, no, that one doesn't exist either. And they're like, third time's a charm,
it
right?
said to me,
gaslight.
check your internet connection is bad. I'm like, this has nothing to do with my internet connection.
So there's that, right? But they're getting better. They're getting smarter. Hallucinations are being reduced. I know that, the Thomson Reuters tool, they've got 2,000 lawyers sitting there training it and validating the response and things like that.
Have you battle tested that one too?
I'm
curious in this side, where does that?
Can I destroy it? Yes. Still, maybe not forever. But that's the point, right? It's getting better and better, and the accuracy level may still overall be lower than that of a diligent human, but when you trade off the efficiency of the tool and how much it can generate, and that's again back to this cornerstone is you've got to have a really good responsible use policy. Front and center of every policy I've had has been human verification is a must. Like nothing goes out the door without a human overseeing it. And if it's going to a client, 2 layers of human review. That's not. I'm not saying everyone has to do that in their policy, but that's what we had because we wanted to ensure the integrity and the information. Now, if it can pass the smell test of 2 humans and it's still wrong, fair enough. And mistakes get made. But the goal being the tool can still be incredibly powerful and help you generate all that efficiency. So it's foolish not doing that. And the goal becomes, it's not that it's like when they used to say that radiologists would be obsolete, and then here we are 7 years later, radiologists are still paid more than ever, they're still doing great. But the AI is really, really great at helping the radiologists. So radiologists who know how to use AI are way more efficient and way more effective. The same is true about legal professionals. We can be already today so much better. The hard part, I think, for a lot of legal professionals is, one, swallowing the pride because we think we're the smartest in the room, and we usually are. The second thing we got to do is we've got to learn how to actually be creative, which we're usually not the most creative in the room. And so we got to be able to learn how to prompt effectively. It's getting back to that idea, right? Having those creative prompts. And if you can't do that, again, I'm going to plug you again, Brian, right? The Ruli tool has a magic prompt, which can help you write the prompt better. And that is a hard skill. Now, of course, with chain of thought reasoning, now some of these models are trying to help circumvent that and recognizing that humans are not as good at that. But even all of that, if you can still get a better prompt in front of the chain of thought reasoning, you're still going to get a better output. So once again, legal professionals who use AI agents are going to be way more effective and way more efficient than those who don't.
That's very interesting. Yeah. I'm curious, as we're talking about, deployment in companies, like something that comes definitely across as we're running pilots and other people are exploring is how do we think about horizontal solutions that, IT's adopting and deploying, maybe it's now Gemini and Gmail and things like that versus like, what's the perspective of, this is the line in the sand where we need a vertical solution that's focused on legal. Like how does everyone on the, think about that as they're going through the journey? And I'm sure everyone's got, we've got all these different AI solutions now. How do you all think about that space?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Tommy and I are aligned, but I would like to hear your thoughts as somebody who's done legal operations in-house. But what I've found is, look, there are a couple of things. There's some political stuff, right? If you're running a legal department, there's only so many favors you can ask for from IT where you can deviate from what what they would like you to use. And so a lot of times legal teams kind of get pigeonholed and end up having to use tools that are available. Some of it is appropriate, obviously, email and whatever, and document storage and all of that. But some of it could be more of an IT ticketing system versus anything designed for lawyers, for instance.
We know lawyers love Jira, so
They
everything we hear.
love it.
We use Jira. We're
I know you are, so that's all right.
Hold
I looked at
on.
you
We
because
have
of
made
that.
we have made an employment and a dispute board that totally protect privilege. I'll tell everyone how to do that later. I don't want to derail us, but there are ways to your point, to use enterprise tools that are sitting on someone else's budget.
Yes.
That will serve the legal team.
Exactly. There are. And so I think I won't name names, but as soon as I say this, you're going to know exactly who I'm talking about. But we had one legal team who had to use what they called Service No for their
Service
IT
No.
ticketing.
Very, very
Drop
heavily
it.
veiled
Hey,
there.
guys, you
You'll
have no
never
idea
guess
what I'm
for
talking
that
about.
one.
I did not make that up.
Service
They're not a
No.
sponsor.
And so I know they're not here. So, and so you will never get a bunch of lawyers to use a tool that they hate. That's the reality. And so this is part of knowing the culture, understanding what people will tolerate, and having a deep understanding of their requirements. So if you're just dipping your toe into the workflow tool, let's say, okay, maybe, you were very creative, you've done more, that's why I looked over at you, because I know you've done more than most people have done with enterprise-wide workflow tools. What we find is we do try to steer them more towards tools that are geared for legal, because they're so much more flexible. And for especially smaller legal departments, it can help them avoid buying a full CLM for a long time, actually, if they are not ready for, and I'm talking like the 10-person, 15-person legal team, which we do end up working with the smaller legal teams pretty frequently. And so it can get some of your needs met until you're ready for the more mature tool. And we take the same approach with AI, right? Stick the bot on top of the FAQ, the policy, whatever. Dip your toe into it that way. The custom GPTs, the gems for the Gemini systems, right? And then you get the team used to using it, and then you're ready to mature to a bigger tool. And then that selection process, implementation, and adoption, which you could have the best tool in the world. If people aren't using it, it's a failure. And so that is how you get adoption at the end of a more mature selection and implementation, if that makes sense.
And the horizontal versus vertical question also has to do with are you already leveraging tools that are just legal tools that are yours that have AI? Like my prediction in the next 2 years, 3 years, everything is going to be an AI product that does. Like I am an AI product that does workflow. I am an AI product that does legal billing, et cetera. That's outside of our market. Like every market is going to be an AI product, and some of it has to do with budget. Your budget may not have a CLM budget for legal tech, but your company may have said you can take 10% of your whole budget, put it towards AI. So you go, okay, then can I put my AI budget towards my CLM, right? So some of it is just manipulating and moving the money around. And that might answer the question of whether I go horizontal or vertical, depending on whether or not I get money. And or are the products that I have in my tech stack, is their AI good enough that I can rely on it so much so that I don't need a different type of product? So some of that, again, goes back to scoping on whether you do it horizontally, vertically, whether you have engineers in your organization that can support if you're buying a standalone product, whether you'd have to go then hire consultants or not and pay that extra fee. and also whether or not your company's, security IT teams have the resources to support yet another product. Like, so I think all of those questions go into the scoping of whether or not you integrate one way or the other.
Yep.
Yeah.
And do your own time. And what I mean by that is solve for your own problems. So CLM is a great example. You don't need to worry about procurement. You know what I'm saying? Like solve for the lawyer's problems. Everything at this point can integrate. Everything integrates with Salesforce, right? And so when you're collecting the business requirements, focus on what your own team's needs are. If you try to do too much, it's not gonna. I've never seen the platform that. No, I've never put it. Let me put it this way: I've never met the lawyer who loves working in Ariba. Right?
That is a truism. That's like a topology. Yeah, that is like you can use it as all swans are white. Oh wait, we can't say that anymore either. Because there's black swans, but that is true. So many thoughts. I love the observation about everything sort of being, this is an AI that does this is an AI that does that. I think it goes back to your question, Brian, around, sort of parallels to the cloud, right? In the past, it was, okay, here's the cloud, now here's all your SaaS applications that build on top of it. I think we're going to have the exact same thing. The world is too wide and there's just too much interesting stuff to go at to just use general purpose models, right? It's or the other model is the outside counsel versus in-house counsel model, right? It's we go to outside counsel because we look for expertise and we need some specialty. So AI agents is going to be that tool, and I think we're going to see a huge proliferation around that. And then I think the other observation that was spurred is we have to remember that. This is no surprise to anyone in the audience, right? I mean, legal teams are generally viewed by a lot of people as cost centers. And we are like, no, we're not, we're value centers. And they're like, no, you're cost center. And we're like, no, we're value center. And they're like, how much revenue did you bring in the door? And you're like, how much cost avoidance did I get you today? And so that's the fight, right? And by the way, I have monetized and I have brought in revenue. Thank you very much.
Good for you.
Yes. But the goal here is we are ultra sensitive to being viewed as a cost center. So, when the wrong ask is, can I have, X dollars for additional budget to go and build out this thing? And it's that other point of, can I reallocate portions of my budget to this thing that's going to make us ultimately more efficient and reduce that perception of there being a cost center and show, one of my former bosses was like, I just want to be known as the cheapest guy in the room, right? And then he was like, I want everyone to think I'm a cheapskate because that was the mentality, right? And I can't do that. I'm sorry.
No, I look at you like a cost center. And but to your point, if you can say, look, if I make this investment, I'll speed the contracting cycle by 3 weeks. We'll get revenue in the door 3 weeks quicker for every deal, or whatever it is. Tell that story. That's a much better story, right?
Exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. And maybe this tees us up to this idea of, and maybe I'll share an anecdote. So often we've been starting pilots with customers, and at the top of the session, one of the attorneys will ask, the checkboxes around, AI readiness, governance, don't train on my data, et cetera, and how do you handle that? And we do a unique instance per company. That's how Ruli sets it up. And we go through that, that formality, of course, and that's super important. What's interesting is we get to the end of sort of that pilot onboarding, and I have the same attorneys or someone else on the team asking me, if I use Ruli and I, I'm writing things into it, et cetera, can you learn from what I'm writing and make the responses better and tailor it to, all the things in my knowledge base? But then I point back to the top of the conversation where you said explicitly, and we have the red lines that you don't want me to train on your data. And so, we're trying to reconcile this, but it seems like there's a desire and a willingness, and maybe that really gets to that scale of AI agents at that future where they can be really, valuable in a new direction, but we of course need to figure out the right governance and processes to get us there. But I'm curious, if we can unlock that future, what does that mean to you? What do those use cases look like? Is that something that we want to? Is that a future that's optimistic? Just an open question to everyone here.
Well, let me say one thing, because I actually had a great kind of aha moment when I was working with the client. We were doing the value exercise, the 4-box matrix. And I was working, they're a large client, and I was at their offsite, and we were doing the whole thing. They'd done their homework 2 weeks prior, or whatever, and I brought it all together, and we were looking at themes, and then they had to break into groups, and they all did it as individuals, and they were going to do it as a team. Like, now let's get together and figure out what we can do as teams, and this will be on our goals for the year, basically, to smooth, efficiency, right? Like, whatever's broken, we're going to try to fix and figure it out in these working sessions. So they'd had this, and I'm sure this will resonate. That's why I'm using this example, because I think it'll resonate. They had like a Frankenstein policy, meaning it ended up being like 36 pages. So over the years, they just kept adding to this policy because every time, this thing came up, we better add it to the policy, right? So they ended up with this giant policy where it ended up contradicting itself because they didn't go back then and smooth it over throughout, right? They didn't normalize it anywhere else in the document. And so AI is a great use case. This is a great use case for AI to solve this. And so then one of the questions came up, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm very risk positive, like, sure, do it, you know what I mean? And so it's risk positive, right? And so they're risk loving, thank you. And they're I went to business school and you went to law school, exactly. And so then we're working within these teams, and the lawyers are like, okay, first use AI to clean it up and make sure it's not contradicting itself. A good rule of thumb is you could always feed it back into the AI and say, is this correct? And have it check its own work too. Yep. And sometimes it'll find its own mistakes. And then one of the lawyers said, what happens if it makes, we'll put a bot, okay, great, we use AI to clean it, then we'll stick a bot on top of it so people can search it. And legal doesn't even need to deal with it anymore. The AI is going to answer all the questions on it. Great use cases. And it'll be super time saving. And then you could always build workflow behind it. And if this doesn't answer your question, you could send it to the right person, yada, yada. So it's something, again, baby steps, you could really build on it. And then somebody asked a good question, what happens if it gives the wrong answer? And then I just let them, because I didn't know what the right answer was, so I pretended to, I'm going to allow you guys to solve this. Go ahead, keep I'm a consultant now, so this is what I do. And the conclusion they came to was, it's the bots, we can get like our agents that we get up and running for clients. Again, we're not really a tech company, but the engineer on my team is married to the guy who built case text for Thomson Reuters, so you two can get together and see if you can break it. So we've had early access to these systems, so we have some really good capabilities in-house. So we make sure they operate at least 90% accuracy. We have a 5-point testing system, right, that we use. So 90% is better than humans. I hate to say this, but that is the reality, even though we don't like to think that. But 10% of our work is garbage, I guess. Anyway, so they said, you know what? Here's what the lawyer said. I was so proud of them. They said, look, humans are going to answer it wrong. I think we have a disclaimer on it that says this is AI generated. Take that for what it's worth. And if it behaves improperly, we're going to treat it like as if a human answered the question improperly. Yeah. And we're going to go back. We're not going to ditch it just because it did one bad thing. Like, that's not what you would do with a human employee, like you said earlier, Tommy. And then, we'll retrain the system, make sure it's doing the right things. But it's a risk they're willing to take because humans, you're already taking that risk with humans.
But retraining the system is why it is so important that you convince the clients that they actually do want to learn off of their own data, because that is your whole value prop right there.
And maybe you can, why don't, Bryan, you take a minute to explain to the audience the difference between training on your own data set, your own system, versus a bigger, it's not training a vanilla model. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit off stage. I think there's a common misconception, and it's also because the technology is moving so quickly, right? Mm-hmm. And I think often people think, well, what does training mean? And if we look back to even pre the models, you're typing things on Google search, there's autocomplete, right? That's a form of machine learning that's happening. You can call that, it's AI, but before LLMs. And our implementation of it, and there's other implementations, we would use the core OpenAI model that we've fine-tuned. But on top of that, uniquely for each company, think of it as a cloud level, and we use AWS, and so that's probably what you might be using too. And then we do machine learning on top that's unique for each company. So the common question of like, oh my God, are my contract clauses going to show up at somewhere else? The answer is no, right? So anything, we're not training the OpenAI model, we're not training our own model, but we're doing this level of learning just like other solutions, other SaaSes, other enterprise SaaS are probably doing that sort of level of cloud learning for you. And so, yeah, I'd love to just share that with folks. And I know it's tricky, but I think like, I think taking a little bit of time to dig deeper and maybe talking to partners who can, share that with you and really break it down, I think will help break down the barriers so we can build that governance, that readiness foundation to set you up for that long-term success.
Yeah, you have to have these conversations with your vendors and have them explain to you exactly that, because you do want it to train based on your own data, because that's how it is going to get better.
If I was in my CLM and it has my body of every contract, and I went into it and did a diligence question of like, which one of my contracts limits me from doing offshoring? If my CLM, provider came back and said, no, I can't remember all of that information. I don't want to remember all of that information and give you the answer to your question. I would be like, this is completely useless. And that's essentially what they're saying. If they're saying, no, don't learn off of all the information you're pouring in, it's the exact opposite of what you want. Learn off of all the information you're pouring in so that these answers get smarter, 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 and serve my business better.
I know we're between possibly the group and
something
happy hour.
No, let's not be those people.
But I do want to I do want to open up to the floor. Maybe if there's any burning questions, we maybe spend a few minutes.
But we can't see you, just so you
we
know.
we
I
also
can see, and I can
those
call
hands.
Samson right there.
Samson, yeah.
Samson,
We
you got a
also
question
can't
for
see
us?
you, but
Wave them high and mighty, because boy, are these lights bright.
They are really
we're
bright.
running. I guess we're running low on fuel. I don't see any
I already gave
questions.
away,
Come on,
which, I already
nobody
gave
has
away
a
which
question.
tool was the hardest to break. So
Right.
that would be. If
I
anyone
will-
knows how to, you can.
We've
please-
answered all your questions.
I will
Good
leave
have.
people with this idea, because this is a session on both AI and legal ops, which is today, legal ops is the team, the rock stars, the ones
Yes.
that make the legal team look great. Like we are, sorry, I'm
Yeah.
taking that credit.
I love
Thank
it.
you, thank
Absolutely.
you.
It's true.
AI is about to be that. So folks, like, marry yourself to the technology, because if a legal team does AI right, it's going to be the superstar. So you want to cozy up and sort of keep that reputation and make it the legal ops and AI relationship that continues to be that.
I could
a rock
not
star.
agree more. I get asked all the time for career advice from newer legal ops professionals, and that is what I tell them. You can really cement yourselves in your role through this, because the lawyers. I actually had another GC ask me, like, we don't have time to play with this stuff, and you shouldn't. I mean, you do, because this is your thing, but most you CLOs and GCs aren't sitting around playing with this technology. So the legal ops professional can really do this, really get to understand the tool, figure out how it's going to solve for your needs. And also, a lot of you might be kind of pigeonholed into Copilot. It's been a little disappointing, if I'm being honest. Okay. And so I'm glad you agree. And so there are other tools, like the Gemini is much more flexible. ChatGPT is much more flexible. They are not insecure if they are done the right way at an enterprise level. And so, and by the way, if your company is blocking any of this, people are just using it rogue, and then you're really at risk. So I could not agree with what you said earlier around like making sure, try to work with your InfoSec teams or whomever to make sure it's implemented correctly, and that you have access to ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, because those tools are much more powerful and flexible than Copilot is, at least at this point from what I'm seeing, and equally as secure if they're implemented the right way and you've got the right licenses and all of that. Okay, that's all.
Perfect.
That's all
Well,
I've got.
yeah, well, thank you, everyone, and I think we will wrap it up there. Thank you to our panel, and thank you for coming.